people have asked me to make a video about Seki Sensei's exploration of the halberd, which is quite interesting from a different background. So I shall do that, but first, hey, don't skip ahead. This is not a sponsorship. Feel free to sign up for my Patreon though. I want to tell you something. If frequent pausing and commenting bothers you, rather than typing "just play the damn video," you might want to go to Let's Ask Seki Sensei's channel and watch the video in full first, so you have peace of mind. I would recommend that anyway, because I'm not gonna just sit here and let someone else's work play in full with a blank expression without saying anything. I don't see the point. I like that jump. Accurate portrayal of what happens when you rush a polearm user with a sword and you don't know what you're getting yourself into. Oh, suddenly I'm getting stabbed.
You can swing down towards his legs and trip him.
I don't know if Seki Sensei has experience with other polearms, but I know he's demonstrated techniques with a kama before, which of course also includes hooking. So it immediately figures out that's a good thing to do, which very much, as you can find that in a number of sources, hooking the legs, really hooking anything.
This video would turn out to be one of the top 3 most enjoyable shoots we've ever done. Says Seki Sensei.
That makes sense, seeing bow and joe techniques applied to the halberd. You see the same thing in European sources where quarterstaff techniques and halberd just bleed over into one another, and you can easily apply staff techniques. In fact, there are even thrusts with staves, even though they don't have points. If nothing else, you can push the opponent away or break their structure, etc. There's still plenty of ways to do that, not to mention getting even a blunt staff end shoved in your head is not exactly pleasant. Classic. With a twist, though. Okay. I have not seen this quite like that. So he actually changes hand position. So there's the parry with the butt end. But then the offhand and the main hand switch position. That's interesting. What I would normally expect is deflection with the butt end and then striking immediately from that side without changing hand position. Swapping hands, I should say. The positions on the half do change. The difference is simply whether it's done by sliding or taking a hand off and repositioning it. I like that, actually. It's a smart way to choke down after having used the butt end, because generally to keep the hand safer, it's a good idea to keep the hand further up on the halberd when you're using the butt end, because you can keep a fairly even grip, of course, and do it this way, but then you have less leverage and the hand is a little bit more exposed, as opposed to here. But then you wouldn't want to straight like this, because then you have very short reach and less power. The way I would want to do that normally would be to, as I see the strike come up, I would let the main hand slide up, and then as I deflect, I slide the offhand up as well. And then after that, the opposite, slide, and this slide can happen as you strike. So while you're hitting, you're narrowing the grip. That's how I would normally want to do it personally, but I like this method. Oh yeah. Very good technique. It's nice and compact. Watch the hand. He also slides the hand to get more power out of it. So at first, you want the control. So the main hand, the right hand, is pretty far up on the halberd to give you more reach with the butt end. And then as he strikes, the right hand moves down. So perfect. I refuse to believe that he has never practiced with polearms. That's the neat thing about his experience with staves. Like I mentioned earlier, staff techniques apply very well, or carry over very well, to halberds and any polearm, really.
Seki Sensei used the maki winding technique to move his top.
Winding, yeah. It's interesting how certain things are just exactly the same across very different areas, geographically, different cultures. Some things just work a certain way biomechanically, which is why you see them over and over again. Certain fundamental basics just work regardless of who and where you are. And when, I guess.
All the way to the right. Then he was able to cut his neck and continuously attack after that. Oh no. Seki Sensei has the halberd on his shoulder. What is he going to do next?
Single-handed swing, probably to the leg. Yep. Yes, that also exists in European halberd or staff mainly manuscripts.
ここで手で踏んないで、ここに落っことして、ここの肩口でこう。そうそうそう。
Yep. Yeah, it looks very familiar. Again, same fundamental basics. A single-handed swing with a staff or polearm may seem counterintuitive because now you're sacrificing a whole lot of control over the weapon, and it is high risk, high reward, basically. You get such enormous reach out of it that you can attack from a distance where the opponent can't do much about it unless they also have a polearm of equal length, and even then they can defend against it but not necessarily retaliate immediately and threaten you at that distance. Just imagine doing that against someone with a sword. You know, pretty much doesn't matter what length of sword. In fact, even if both have a long sword or a great sword, this is still a technique you can use. Just letting go with the main hand, just swinging with the offhand for enormously increased reach. You can swing to the legs. That's typically, that's a typical target. The downside is if this fails, you may be in trouble. You know, if the opponent manages to block that and control it and then rush in, it takes a while to get that back into a ready position. So, as said, high risk, high reward.
The next technique is an adaptation of Asemi Kenjutsu.
That's uncomfortable even with the practice version. Yeah, just imagine a real steel blade digging into your neck like that.
It involves deliberately letting the enemy attack your weapon and using that energy to counterattack.
The neat thing about this is that the opponent basically helps you power your counterattack. Because as you block with this end, if this gets pushed in, the halberd head comes forward. So you can accelerate it very quickly because of this counter reaction. Even in a demonstration here, you see how fast this is. Like, it's almost instantaneous. The way it's done here is couching it like a lance, basically. So this way, that actually helps alleviate the main disadvantage of holding the polearm out in one hand, which is you have a long lever now for the opponent to use against you, and it's pretty difficult to hold against that with one hand. But like this, not so much a problem. This also really shows the problem of facing a polearm with a sword. You can be stabbed 3 times before you're in range to actually do something, to actually threaten the polearm user with a sword. It's basically like facing off against a rifle with a handgun at 100 meters or yards. Yeah, could you do it? Maybe, if you get lucky, maybe, but you're at quite a disadvantage.
By crouching, the attack comes from below, making it even harder for the opponent to evade.
I'm not sure I would agree with that. To me personally, it doesn't make a big difference whether a thrust with a polearm or any weapon really comes straight or from below or even from above. The response is the same. You have to displace it some kind of way. And in fact, I would argue, if anything, straight on is harder. If the weapon is angled, you may get more visual cues about the distance, whereas if it comes straight at your eye, it's pretty difficult to gauge. That's just how I look at it.
Cool.
Yes, exactly. Oop, don't fall over. That's exactly what this shape here is for, to intercept the weapon and control it and even twist the haft to kind of lock it in. And I think that's probably also why so many polearms are upswept, just to allow you to kind of funnel it in a little bit more. It works if it's straight on top, but this helps.
でこう剣にもできるこう
Yep. Hooking the sword.
Using the gap in the blade to catch or hook the opponent's sword
Yes.
makes it possible to displace their weapon and launch an attack.
結構いいなこれ本物欲しいな
Me too. Someone should totally make a proper halberd for Seki Sensei. Although I don't know if they can actually import those. As far as I know, Japan has pretty strict laws. After all these years, I still don't have a properly historically accurate, well-made halberd replica. What the hell's up with that? They are surprisingly hard to find. I mean, there are plenty of halberds on the market overall, but a lot of them are not terribly well made. So I need to make that happen sometime.
Let's have the senseis switch their weapons and see how Seki Sensei would fight against a halberd.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he'll figure something out, but it's much more difficult. Yeah, that's the downside. Exactly. You can see that he's pushing forward and changing the hand position to be lower. You can see it here, how low the hands are. That's the downside. Like you get all this reach and you get power too, but it's such a long lever, especially when the hands are closer together, that yes, it can be knocked aside. Particularly with another polearm, which has the mass to do it effectively, but even with a sword. But of course, as a polearm user, you know that that's what they're trying to do, so you can just deny contact, do a little circular disengagement. Even if it gets knocked to the side, there are ways to just come right back up and essentially use that momentum to pull it back up into an undercut, things like that.
ここのいろんなのがついてて面が広いっていうのが唯一そういう意味では欠点かもしれない。
It's more of a target.
こう伸びきったところでこう引っ掛けられるわけで回してくる。これグッと手広げるとこらえられる
Yeah,
から。
exactly.
これグッと手広げるとこらえられるから。そうするとこうなってこうなる。
I love this kind of thing. When you think this could be countered by this and that, and then he just immediately does it. Yeah. I mean, this man knows what he's talking about.
そうこうなってこうなる。
He may not be familiar with a halberd as such, but clearly with staves and other polearms, and just the basics of combat apply in so many ways. In fact, it's amazing to see how well he adjusts to this weapon that he's presumably never held before in this form. That's fun to watch, and I imagine they had fun filming this too.
振ってるだけで向こう回せなくなるから。これは面白いとこだね。
I mean, you can see it.
非常に面白いこれ。
Skallagrim Sensei got the halberd pulled out of his hands earlier because he was holding near the end
Yeah.
when he got winded.
And that's why it's so important to keep changing hand position. If someone were to ask how to hold a halberd, and they say, do you hold it like this, or like this, or like that? The answer is yes. You see all kinds of different hand positions in the manuscripts. And that's really the beauty of it. It's adaptable. And whenever people ask me what my favorite melee weapon is, and they insist that I narrow it down to just one, how dare you, I have to go with the halberd. Swords are great and everything, swords are cool, and they're much more convenient to carry, but polearms, if you have the space, that's just where it's at. In fact, even with somewhat limited space, there are still ways to use them. Anyway, I've blabbered enough, so thank you, Seki Sensei and Shogo, for making this video. It was very interesting, fun to watch and to comment on. Hope you enjoyed it too. Thanks for watching, and take care, folks.